In my previous life, I and Qin Wei, the Duke of Wei, were a couple envied by all, deeply affectionate, unwavering in our devotion. When I drew my final breath, a single tear from him was enough to send me away content. Yet when I opened my eyes once more, I heard the news, he had come to propose marriage. But the one he sought to marry was not me. I rushed to the main hall, pushing through layers of shadows, only to see Chen Wei holding my cousin's hand. Before the elders, he solemnly vowed, "I know Lady Yun is not as gentle as Lady Yao, but I will protect her in every way." I turned away, swallowing the tears burning in my throat, wondering if everything that had passed was nothing more than a dream. But that dream had felt far too real. I remembered clearly, Chen Wei was 19 that year. His mother had just passed away, and not long after, his father remarried. The ancients once said, a single word, filial, can bring a man to his knees. Even the emperor could not escape such a duty, let alone Chen Wei. I still remembered the sorrow in his eyes when he told me, "Lady Yao, my life is not easy." Those words pierced my heart. That was why I had been so willing to marry him. After our marriage, we became a pair admired by all. He fought bravely on the battlefield and, with every promotion, requested that I be granted honor alongside him. I managed the household, befriended the noble wives, and cleared countless obstacles on his behalf. Later, when Chen Wei was granted the title of Marquis Dingyuan, he once praised me, "Your sleeves move with grace, you turn the tides with ease." I disliked that phrase, it sounded laced with irony. I frowned. Yet Chen Wei loved me more than anyone else. Even his own flesh and blood could not compare. Every time he returned home, he went straight to my quarters. Unable to restrain himself, he would cover my eyes and press a burning kiss upon my lips. Until our hair turned white and our bodies withered, Chen Wei never took a concubine. Even at the end, he shed one last tear. I instinctively touched the place where that tear had fallen. In our past life, we had grown old together, our bodies frail, our years heavy. He lay bedridden, I was silver-haired and wrinkled. But now, beneath my hand was the soft, youthful skin of a girl, the illusion of that dream shattered in an instant. That year, I was still an unmarried maiden, and Chen Wei had just turned 18. In that past life, on this very day, he had just been promoted. Riding through the city in high spirits, he saw every blossom in Chang'an bloom, and met my cousin beneath the willows outside the city gate. They found each other kindred spirits, sharing thoughts without restraint. From my cousin's lips, he learned that I was the lively, cherished one at home. And so, on every festival and holiday, Chen Wei would invite both of us, sisters and a few others, for outings. It wasn't as if I hadn't once suspected that he harbored feelings for her. Yet he never once revealed even a trace of it. Even when my cousin suffered under her husband's family and died, he merely replied indifferently, "I know." Later, when news came that she hadn't been properly buried, it was I who begged Chen Wei to bring her ashes home. And now, on the very same year, same month, same day, he came to propose to her. The hall was bustling with laughter and celebration. Chen Wei and my cousin were the center of attention, surrounded by teasing smiles. Grandmother, aged and kindly, asked him just one question, "When do you plan to wed?" Chen Wei's expression was calm, his voice neither hurried nor slow, "I only wish to marry cousin as soon as possible." I looked closely and saw how much he had changed. In our past life, when he was 18, he had not yet been tormented by his stepmother and still bore a trace of boyish innocence. When we went boating on the lake, he would splash me with water, then lean over to pluck a lotus for my cousin. At the lantern festival, he let her pick the prettiest lanterns first, the ones with riddles everyone wanted to solve, then handed me whatever remained. In that instant, I understood everything. Perhaps, he too had dreamt the same dream as I did. Now that the dream had ended, perhaps it was time for both of us to wake. Their betrothal was decided in haste, and the wedding was set just as quickly. The household was consumed by preparations for the dowry, leaving no one to mind me. Those days, my heart was in disarray. The sight of red everywhere in the manor made it hard to breathe. When mother went to the temple to offer incense, I bribed the gatekeeper, disguised myself as a young man, and slipped out. The carriage wandered aimlessly through the streets. Outside the window, late spring winds scattered petals like rain, carpeting the earth. I thought of the springtimes from that dream long ago, so much like today. The first meeting, love at first sight. The second, my heart thundered. When we came to understand each other, it was the smile of a soulmate. I, Xianxiao, proud and clever all my life, lost to a false affection, giving my heart to the one who betrayed it. Lady Yun, the flowers ahead are in fuller bloom. Let me take you to see them. Through the blur of my tears, I thought I heard Qinwei's voice. I wiped my eyes and chased after the pair of silhouettes that looked so much like them. But no matter how far I ran, I could not catch up. The street was empty when I stopped, covered my face, and wept. Liar. If you never loved me, why didn't you just say so? When my anger was spent, I staggered back. Passing by a lotus pond, I saw a man fishing. Gazing at the duckweed covering the surface, I muttered, "No one tends this place, the fish will soon suffocate." He turned and called me by name. So the ghost in the woods earlier was you, Lady Yao, in disguise. Only then did I recognize him, Liu Bin, the fourth prince, doomed to die young. I had never held any affection for him. In my past life, I only learned of his hobbies to aid Qinwei's career. He was in charge of selecting officials for the Ministry of War, known for his keen eye. I visited influential nobles, hoping Qinwei's file would catch his attention. And indeed, Qinwei was promoted, but sent to the frontier under the prince's command. He was gone for 2 years. Letters were scarce. Every day, I prayed for his safe return. Later, as his rank rose higher, my own social circle expanded. At every banquet, I had to mind my words and conduct, for one misstep could ruin everything. The weariness and fear, I could share them with no one, not even my husband at the border, nor mother at home. I could only swallow it all. When Qinwei returned to court with the fourth prince, he looked at me in surprise. Lady Yao has grown accustomed to comfort. Why have you grown so thin? I answered, social obligations aren't easy. He laughed. Lady Yao is spoiled by her mother, and upon marrying, she took charge of the household with ease, much lighter work than her elder cousins. Telling a man of a woman's suffering is like playing the lute to a cow. So why, in this life, should I endure pain for him again? If I can find someone who truly understands me, I will not crave glory or wealth, only a peaceful life. With that thought, I knelt and bowed. Greetings to your highness. The fourth prince nodded slightly. It's late. You should return home. He packed up his fishing rod and basket and left, his gait slightly uneven. They say the fastest way to forget someone is to find someone new. Watching the prince's retreating figure, weary yet steady, a thought rose in my heart. In 2 days, all unmarried daughters of officials above the 6th rank could register for the palace selection. I remembered that several royal consorts in the previous dynasty had been chosen through such a process. But for some reason, the fourth prince had once defied an imperial decree of marriage, and even until his death, his inner chambers remained empty and cold. I timed my return carefully, and in the carriage, made up my mind. Once mother returned from the temple, I would tell her everything. She studied me for a long time, then frowned. Yesterday, your aunt came by. She said Lady Yun's dowry was too thin and wanted to borrow some of our treasures to add to hers. Fortunately, I hadn't agreed yet. If you're selected for the palace, lending them out would be a real loss. I rested my head on her knee and smiled softly. In the previous life, my cousin had married into wealth, borrowing several heirlooms from our second branch and never returning them. Mother, out of courtesy, swallowed the grievance. Now that they were marrying an equal match and still wanted to take advantage of us, it was simply too much. By dusk, I dined with mother. Passing through the carved corridor, I ran into my cousin sneaking about. The moment she saw me, her pretty face, pale from surprise, softened at once. Lady Yao, why do you walk without a sound? You nearly frightened me to death. I smiled faintly. What brings you out here? Her cheeks flushed pink. I went to the Willow Pavilion to meet a friend, just for a short chat. I nodded, already certain that what I'd seen earlier had not been a mistake. In my previous life, it was at that same pavilion that the two of them formed their bond. And now they met there again, perhaps fate between them had yet to end. Who would have thought Chen Wei, so focused on his career, was also a man who cherished memories? A bitter taste rose in my throat. I was about to find an excuse to leave when my cousin suddenly said, "Oh, that friend mentioned you today." I stopped walking, a flicker of hope lighting within me. My cousin's expression turned thoughtful. He said he has a close friend, the legitimate eldest son of the commander of the Imperial Guards, named Tu Qiang. A tall, sturdy man, honest and diligent. He wished to introduce him to you. A cold laugh escaped me. The eldest son of the commander of the Imperial Guards. The very man who, in my past life, devoted himself to aiding Chen Wei, only to die on the battlefield, leaving no heir. I remembered him clearly because Chen Wei had so often sighed beside me, if only old Tu were still alive. He was loyal to me, yet I caused his line to end. I can never make amends. So now, in this life, was he making amends by giving me, his former wife, to his loyal friend? Seeing my pale face, my cousin hesitated. Are you troubled, Lady Yao? Don't worry, that friend said Tu Qiang isn't the crude or lustful sort. He won't mistreat you. Besides, he's sworn brother to brother Chen. We wouldn't let him bully you. At the last words, her cheeks reddened again. I looked at her in silence, momentarily dazed. Men will always favor beauty. My cousin was stunning, dressed in a soft yellow curved collar gown, her movements graceful and refined. Her cheeks bloomed like pink crabapple petals, her lashes long and trembling. She was a picture that could make any man's heart sway. And I. My features were more subdued. I often wore darker colors to project authority before servants and guests, dull, restrained, without charm. Who, seeing both of us, would ever choose me over her? I smiled bitterly and said nothing more, turning to leave. 2 days later, I rode to the palace for the selection of consorts. The hardships of my past life had become my greatest strengths. Even the strictest matrons inspecting our manners and appearance could find no fault, and soon my name hung at the top of the board. That row held 6 names, 3 of those girls would later become princess consorts. I steadied my mind and approached them with composure, neither proud nor servile, and gradually earned their goodwill. When the day of the final selection arrived, those who had befriended me were all granted imperial marriages in turn. Then came my name. The emperor looked toward the 4th prince and asked, "Old 4th, do you think the legitimate daughter of the Shin family is suitable to be your primary consort?" Fearing he might refuse as in the previous life, I quickly lifted my gaze to him. His eyes were calm and distant as they swept past me. I blinked several times in silent plea, then worried he might take it as reluctance, so I mouthed clearly, "I will marry." He studied me for a long moment, then seemed to smile faintly. Father sees more clearly than I. As for my marriage, I'll let father decide. A murmur swept through the hall. Cold prickles ran down my spine. Only when the emperor spoke again did the tension finally break. Back at the Chuzu Palace, the other chosen consorts rushed to surround me. When they learned I'd been named the 4th prince's primary consort, they refused to let me leave, calling me sister-in-law and tracing every distant family tie they could invent. I answered with polite smiles, but in my heart, I understood. They courted favor only because the 4th prince's frail health barred him from ascending the throne. His position posed no threat. I recalled how, in my past life, after marrying Chen Wei, every banquet I attended ended in mockery or humiliation, and no one ever came to my aid. I had forced a smile through every slight. But now, before the wedding had even taken place, I was already treated with respect, basking in the shadow of another man's rank. The feeling was bittersweet. In this life, both Qian Wei and I had chosen different paths. From now on, however he lived, it no longer concerned me. I only wished peace for my family, and a quiet, steady life beside the fourth prince. When the imperial decree of marriage was officially issued, the selection ended, and the chosen maidens departed the palace one by one. News reached my family early. Except for grandmother, too frail to walk, everyone came to the gate to greet me. Mother beamed, her joy uncontained. "You've been gone more than a month, everyone's missed you dearly." I looked around but did not see my cousin. As we walked toward the main hall, I noticed several red wedding papers still hanging, and it struck me, my cousin was already married. Others noticed my lingering gaze and turned to look as well. My aunt laughed knowingly. "You two grew up together, inseparable. Lady Yun didn't know you'd entered the selection, she's been asking about you non-stop." I nodded lightly. "I'll invite her over one day soon." But just as the words left my lips, my cousin entered, arm in arm with Qian Wei. She wore the attire of a married lady, her brows and eyes carrying the soft charm of experience. Heat welled behind my eyes. I had long known there was no going back, yet seeing it before me still hurt. "You truly are heartless." She gave me a sideways glance, half chiding. "You slipped away to the palace without a word, skipped my wedding, and left me foolishly trying to introduce someone to you." I lowered my head, sipping my tea with a faint smile. "There was nothing certain then, no need to speak of it. I missed your wedding, so I prepared a small gift to make up for it. I hope you won't hold it against me." She scolded me a bit longer before her mother called her away for conversation. I sat quietly for a while, then rose and left, feeling nothing but an empty calm. As I crossed the rockery bridge to return to my quarters, Qian Wei suddenly appeared before me, blocking the path. He looked at me, no words, no movement, yet even that silent gaze was enough to make the heart tremble. We had lived together for 60 years in our past life. Even raising a dog for that long would have bred affection, let alone two people bound as husband and wife. Perhaps he, too, felt a trace of reluctance. Perhaps he resented that I so easily agreed to marry another. "The fourth prince is of noble birth," he said at last, his tone measured. "Do not act rashly. If you stir up trouble, it will drag your entire family down, at best an inconvenience, at worst, a danger to the prince himself." My thoughts, chaotic a moment ago, suddenly stilled. So this was how he saw me, reckless, unthinking, a woman prone to causing scandal. Half my heart went cold. Still, I feigned confusion. "So the noble son-in-law jumps out of nowhere, just to say that." I smiled faintly. How strange. His gaze lingered on me, searching for something beneath my expression. "Surely," I added sweetly, "you're not suggesting I share a husband with my dear cousin, like the Emperor Yao and his two consorts?" The mockery struck its mark. His face froze in shock. "If you keep staring," I snapped, letting my temper flare, "I'll have someone dig your eyes out." With that, I turned on my heel and left, skipping lunch altogether under the pretext of fatigue. 2 months later, my cousin returned to the manor. Qian Wei carefully helped her step over the threshold, the two of them the very picture of tenderness. Blushing, she announced before everyone, when I returned home that day, I discovered I was with child. "I came today to share the good news." "You don't know," she laughed, when my Qian Wei heard, he couldn't sleep all night, thinking up 3 or 4 names for the baby. Qian Wei smiled and continued, "If it's a girl, she'll be Qinyu, you, as in the sprouting of new grass, brimming with life. If it's a boy, he'll be Qin Jinghua, Jinghua, from the record of music in Yang Tower, spring is harmonious, and the scene is bright, symbolizing peace and hope." The room filled with delighted murmurs. But I stood frozen, remembering our child from the previous life. At his full-month banquet, when someone asked about a name, Qian Wei had merely said, offhandedly, Qin Yang. A plain name, so common that 10 men in the capital might turn their heads if you called it out. Yet now, for the child of the woman he loved, his words carried poetry and meaning. So this was the truth. Only when one has never been truly loved does one fail to see it clearly. Love, or the absence of it, had always been plain to see. As laughter continued, Qin Wei suddenly turned to me. Lady Yun says her younger cousin is talented and well-read. What does you think of the names we've chosen? Every gaze in the room turned toward me. My cousin's eyes sparkled. Despite her pregnancy, she hurried to my side and cooed. Lady Yao, you're the cleverest of us all, tell me what you think. Before I could speak, Qin Wei pulled her protectively into his arms, his eyes wary. You may talk, he said, but mind your condition. I gave a short, cold laugh. How utterly ridiculous. Did they not realize how absurd they both looked? Even the naming of their child, something the patriarch himself should decide, was being paraded before me, an outsider, as though I were meant to bless it. Silence fell over the room. My aunt forced a laugh, eager to change the subject. Let's talk about Lady Yao's wedding instead. Summer's coming, won't the heavy ceremonial dress smudge the paint and melt the rouge? My cousin quickly chimed in, oh, yes. On my wedding day, the weather wasn't even hot, but I cried so much at leaving home that my makeup ran, and my Qin Wei laughed for hours. Qin Wei gently tapped her nose, smiling with indulgent affection. I propped my chin on my hand and turned toward the window. Beyond the wall, the crabapple branches stood tall and pink in full bloom. When their petals fell and blanketed the courtyard, it would be my turn to wed. A prince's wedding was an affair of grandeur, arranged by the Ministry of Rites. Because our family had long resided in the capital and held numerous connections, 2 separate banquets were planned. On the wedding day, Qin Wei and my cousin attended as guests. She had wanted to find me to chat, but the halls were packed with guests, so many that even the maids and attendants in my chamber barely had room to move. Fearing for her unborn child, she dared not push through. Instead, she sent a teasing message. My dear cousin has risen so high. I ought to be happy, yet seeing all these distant relatives who never cared now rushing to attend your wedding, it makes me almost angry. I smiled and shook my head. Just that small motion made several ladies nearby gasp in admiration. The phoenix crown is pure gold. One whispered. Inlaid with pearls and jade, it must be heavy as sin, poor thing, she can't even tilt her head. The auspicious hour for the bridal procession was set at dusk. The 4th prince refused to let anyone else take his place. He dismounted himself, took one end of the bridal veil, and led me in. We bowed to heaven and earth, then entered the bridal chamber. I sat by the bed until the sun had fully set, when the 4th prince returned, smelling faintly of wine. Everyone else withdrew. Then, the red veil was lifted. When his narrow, elegant eyes met mine, heat rose to my cheeks. When we finally joined as husband and wife, I, remembering his limp, tried to assist him gently. But he grew irritated. This prince only walks with difficulty, not because he's crippled. Lady Yao is too courteous. I started to explain, but his mouth silenced my words. That night, the water was called for 3 times. The next morning dawned bright and clear. We entered the palace to offer our thanks. The emperor was busy with state affairs. He didn't even look up, merely waved us off. The empress, who was not his mother by blood, offered a few polite words and then dismissed us with tea. On the way back to the residence, the 2 of us sat facing each other. The 4th prince's expression was calm, almost detached, so accustomed, it seemed, to being treated with indifference. In that moment, I finally understood why a man as noble as he was would end his life in quiet desolation. You must pity this prince, he said suddenly, voice low and hoarse. I smiled faintly. Your Highness is mistaken. I'm merely the daughter of a minor official, quietly admiring your Highness from afar. He turned his head slightly toward me, but said nothing more. The carriage fell into a silence so heavy it was almost oppressive. After a while, I broke it with a question. If that day, during the consort selection, I hadn't insisted so stubbornly, Whom would your highness have chosen? He paused. When he finally spoke, his tone was flat. No one. This prince had no wish to choose anyone. I nodded, asking nothing further. After a moment, I leaned closer with a soft pout. When we return to my family for the third-day visit, will your highness come with me? He murmured assent, then closed his eyes. My purpose achieved, I said no more. The horse's hooves beat in rhythm, the carriage turned a corner, and a gust of wind swept through the curtain. And there, through that lifted veil, I caught the gaze of a familiar face. Both of us froze. My carriage went west, he rode south. Fate had granted this one passing glance. After this, our paths would never cross again. The homecoming feast was lavishly prepared at my mother's house. Only my cousin was absent. She had taken ill after suffering pregnancy complications and was confined to bed. When my aunt told the story, unease stirred within me. Qinwei's mother still lived. My cousin could not have been mistreated by a stepmother. And though his father was lecherous, he wasn't so cruel as to torment a pregnant daughter-in-law. Could it be Qinwei himself? If you're unwell, the fourth prince said gently, we can leave early. Another time, we'll invite mother and everyone to visit the palace. His thoughtful tone made me laugh softly. Enough, this was someone else's family matter now. I had no place in it anymore. Better to think of the days ahead. If nothing changed, the throne would one day fall to the third prince. But rumor had it that relations between him and the fourth were strained. If that rift could not be mended, we might have to prepare for the worst. After resting a while at my mother's home, fatigue began to set in. I told her, in a few days, I'll bring the ladies of the household to the fourth prince's residence to pay respects. Perhaps she didn't take it to heart, or perhaps she had her own plans, for she never came. Meanwhile, after the wedding, the fourth prince had entrusted all household matters to me. And since the emperor had recently fallen ill, the stronger princes were all secretly vying for position. There was little time left for leisurely visits. Sometimes, when the ache in my wrists grew sharp, I could only sigh. Truly, a life of toil. Yet I still found moments of peace, an idle cup of tea here and there. Compared to the fourth prince, who had been burdened with new responsibilities and was soon to lead troops to the frontier, I had little cause for complaint. I was about to stroll through the garden when a maid hurried in to report. Your Grace, there's a lady outside claiming to be your cousin. She asks for your help. Of course, it was my cousin, sent by Qinwei himself. She entered with a pout and a sharp tone. It's all his fault. Too incompetent to control his subordinates, my husband's credit has been stolen twice. Lady Yao, you must help me. Then she glared. You used to come begging me, but now that you're a royal consort, it's my turn to bow my head. If I'd known this, I'd never have agreed to my Qinwei's proposal. I'd have joined the palace selection with you instead. Mind your words, I warned. She glanced around but ignored the caution. I invited her to stay for lunch. Since the fourth prince wouldn't be returning that afternoon, I sent his meal to him. Knowing he lacked capable officers, I took the chance to recommend Qinwei. When my cousin learned of it, she was overjoyed and brought me a basket of preserved plums in thanks. She was deep into her pregnancy and craved sour foods, eating them with every meal. I tried one piece. It was so tart that I had to down 3 cups of tea to chase away the taste. Just like before, Qinwei once again followed the fourth prince to war. I had already prepared everything the prince might need: armor, provisions, travel silver. He noticed, though he said nothing. Only that night, his passion burned fiercer than usual. At the end, he whispered just one line. You are very good. The day before the army's departure, the gatekeeper handed me a sealed letter. It was written in Qinwei's familiar hand. My mother is old-fashioned and strict. Lady Yun is proud yet gentle. Tomorrow, I march to war, and I fear I may never return. I beg your grace to look after my wife and child. One day, I shall repay your kindness, even if only as grass returning the favor of spring sunlight. I smiled faintly and took up a brush to reply. Lady Yao cannot shoulder such a great burden. If the general still worries, perhaps it would be better to send your wife back to the Shen household. A young page brought back a letter and whispered in my ear. The general's wife quarreled with him again. She's taken ill with the child and refuses to let him leave the capital. I sighed quietly. Qin Wei's hunger for military glory burned too fiercely. He cared nothing for my cousin's pleas. But everything was already set. If he failed to depart by tomorrow, he would be branded a deserter, and there would be no place left for him in the capital. By the heat of July, the first autumn robes were already worn. The fourth prince reached the frontier just as the harvest began, but the northern tribes sent their troops south, raiding and plundering grain. Battles flared across the borderlands without pause. In my previous life, I'd once heard Qin Wei lament, the fourth prince never pillaged the people, yet the court treated him too harshly. Even after victories, our soldiers starved. So this time, to keep the troops fed, and to ease the burden on the prince's mind, I quietly ordered the stewards of my household to hire escort agencies and open a safe, discreet supply route to the border. Half a month later, a messenger arrived with a letter. When I opened it, my lips curved in surprise. He, who spoke so sparingly, wrote with the grace of flowing water. From that day on, every 2 weeks a thick letter arrived, pages filled with his hand. By year's end, another parcel came, a red fox pelt, hunted by his own bow, which the household seamstress fashioned into a collar for a cloak, luxurious and warm. I had just lifted it to my shoulders when news arrived. My cousin was struggling in childbirth. Childbirth is a walk through the gates of death. When I reached her residence, my aunt was in tears. Our poor Lady Yun, she cried, the weather's bitter cold, yet her mother-in-law wouldn't even allow a brazier. The room's frozen over. She slipped and fell, and the bleeding hasn't stopped since. A chill ran through me. I immediately sent for an imperial physician and fetched century-old ginseng from my own stores. My aunt wept harder at that. When the physician examined her pulse, he sighed and shook his head. The mother has lost the will to live. Unless her heart is set right, even the immortals could not save her. My aunt stamped her foot in fury, cursing everyone from the mother-in-law to Qin Wei himself. When he came proposing marriage, his sweet words were endless. He knew my daughter was soft-hearted and promised to cherish her always. And now, he's gone off to war, leaving her so desolate she no longer wishes to live. My chest tightened. I didn't know whether to thank fate that I hadn't married him, or to hate him for pushing her to such ruin. The family took turns comforting her, but my cousin clenched her jaw and refused to relent. When the physician asked, "Do we save the mother or the child?" I cut in sharply. The Chen family will choose the child, of course. The mother-in-law has never liked her. Once she dies, they'll marry in the niece from her side of the family, and Qin Wei will have a new wife soon enough. He'll forget the one who died, and that poor child will be forced to call her mother. My aunt gaped at me, the others frowned in shock. The physician, a seasoned man of the palace, understood at once and nodded. In that case, he said, I will use a strong draught to save the infant. But before the medicine was even prepared, a terrified cry came from within the birthing room. No. Frightened out of her despair, my cousin clung to life. After a full day and night of labor, a baby boy was born, his cry faint as a kitten's mewl. I wrote the entire incident in my next letter. When the fourth prince read it, he replied simply, "When you bear a child, I will not leave your side for a single step." At the start of spring, the fourth prince raised his army from Hamsok Prefecture. He appointed Qin Wei as cavalry general, sending him west to strike the northern tribes, while other generals attacked from the south and north, closing in on their stronghold. The campaign was a triumph. The army reclaimed lost territory, captured thousands of enemy soldiers, seized 100,000 livestock, and routed 2 of their tribal kings. For his merits, Qin Wei was promoted to general of the chariot and cavalry, the other two commanders were granted marquisates. The fourth prince himself, for his command and success, was made Prince Rong, a titled prince of the first rank. Among all the imperial sons, he was the first to be ennobled. Yet because of his lingering illness, he posed no threat to the succession. Flattery replaced jealousy, sycophants crowded his halls. Still, I knew better. The brighter the flowers, the nearer they were to wilting. I, no, the princess consort of Prince Rong, continued as before, smiling when I should, concealing sorrow when I must. Each month I sent grain caravans and letters to the frontier, ensuring supplies and news flowed without break. By autumn that year, Qin Wei achieved another great victory. He annihilated an elite force, captured over 3,000 enemy scouts, seized over 1 million head of horses, cattle, and sheep, and returned without a single loss. The court granted him the title Marquis of Pacifying the West. In the previous life, his fief had barely numbered 1,100 households. Now, it had swelled to 3,800. My judgment had never been wrong, he was indeed a man of talent. But no more than that. Pride drove him to disobey orders, crossing the river without command to launch a surprise attack. Prince Rong, seeing that his merits outweighed his faults, covered for him and allowed the title to stand. Yet from that day on, Qin Wei was never trusted with power again. In the military, the gravest taboo is disobedience. The following spring, the prince ordered several generals to march simultaneously and memorialized the throne to appoint 2 more commanders from the northwest. Together, their 3 forces would encircle the northern tribes. The tribes usually rested through spring and raided in autumn. This time, the prince broke tradition, launching a surprise assault that left the enemy king unprepared. Over 10 minor chieftains were captured, tens of thousands of men and women taken prisoner, and livestock beyond counting seized. Because of this, the prince returned victorious half a year earlier than in my past life. The emperor sent envoys to meet him at the border, reclaiming his command and granting the army leave to return to the capital. A month later, I finally saw the prince again. He was gaunt, his skin darkened by wind and sun. A brief separation made the reunion all the sweeter. That night, the wind howled outside, bending the red candles. The rain had just stopped, and the scent of passion still lingered in our breath. Panting softly, he whispered beside my ear, "There'll be no war for the next 2 or 3 years. Give me a child." I remembered what turmoil awaited in the coming years, but I smiled and nodded. This mustn't be delayed. While warmth filled my chamber, rage filled the Marquis of Pacifying the West's household. This year, Qin Wei received countless letters from home. Each one, when opened, contained either his mother's complaints or his wife's reproaches. He bled for his family on the battlefield, yet what he received in return was coldness and blame. It was almost laughable. When he returned home and found not a single lamp lit in any courtyard, bitterness welled in him. He went straight to his wife's quarters and knocked. "Lady Yun, I'm home." There was no response. He pushed open the door to see her sitting up in bed, his heart softened at once. "Lady Yun, you've suffered. Where's the child? Let me see him." But that single sentence struck her like a whip. She hurled a wooden pillow at him and cried hysterically. "Faithless, heartless man. You still know the way back. Do you know how your mother treats me? I wrote to you again and again begging you to intervene, but you ignored me. You let her torment me until I fell and nearly lost our child. Tell me, who matters more, your mother or me?" Anger surged in him, then faded just as quickly. His throat tightened, he couldn't find words. He couldn't understand. In his past life, he'd been gone 2 full years without trouble. How was it that this time, barely a year apart, everything had fallen apart? "She is still my mother," he finally murmured. Lady Yun sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "You promised to protect me, and I foolishly believed you. Now look what's become of me. If it weren't for my cousin's help, I'd already be in my grave." At that, Qin Wei remembered the composed wife of his past life. Remembered the prince hunting the red fox across the snow. Remembered that once peaceful, perfect home. And his heart twisted painfully. After a long silence, he asked hoarsely, "Then what do you want me to do?" She repeated her mother's words, either move out and live separately to avoid conflict, or divorce. The veins in his forehead bulged. He slammed the table and roared. Never. Don't even dream of it. I've just been promoted and granted a marquisate. If I cut ties with my mother now, what will people think of me? Have you no sense? Lady Yun shouted back through tears, then divorce me. The next morning, just as the prince returned to the capital, I had barely risen when my mother's household sent word in panic. Your Highness, the eldest young lady is demanding a divorce from her husband. Please come quickly and persuade her. Startled, I hurriedly dressed and went straight to the Shen residence. My cousin sat sideways on a couch, her face ashen. Qin Wei held their 1-year-old son in his arms, his expression dark and cold. My aunt, upon seeing me, looked as though she'd found salvation. Your Highness, please, talk some sense into her. She's gone mad, nothing we say works. She's suffered for years at her husband's house, just when the worst is over, she wants a divorce. My cousin wept in silence. Qin Wei sat rigid, saying nothing. I knew words would not reach her now, so I turned to him instead. Have you forgotten what you said the day you married her? Chen Wei gave a bitter smile. But the one she's fighting against is my mother. My own mother. I froze. A strange flicker of dark amusement passed through me. So, I said softly, you mean to let your mother torment my cousin to death? Qin Wei's eyes reddened, veins bulged as he shouted. Then tell me what I should do. You're so clever, surely you can reconcile the two of them. His roar silenced everyone in the room. My cousin burst into tears. It's all my fault. I'm useless, can't even deal with my mother-in-law. Better to die and be done. At once, the warmth drained from Chen Wei's face, leaving it pale and cold. When I turned back, I caught the look in his eyes, an emotion so tangled, so unreadable, that my chest tightened. Your Highness, he said hoarsely, I know nothing of women's affairs. Please, instruct me. How convenient, to place the burden on me. I wanted to ignore him. But seeing the pleading eyes of my family, I could only devise a compromise. I divided the Marquisite's estate into 4 separate courtyards, one for Madame Qin, one for my cousin, the others left neutral, a broad empty space between them so neither would cross paths. It brought my cousin some peace. As for Chen Wei, caught between the two, his days became misery. When I told the prince of my arrangement that evening, I hadn't expected his jealousy to show so plainly. So, he said coolly, my princess cares quite a bit for Chen Wei. I lowered my gaze and smiled. Your Highness is far above him in every way, he's weak, while you are wise and mighty. His lips curved. A silver tongue indeed. He lifted his teacup, the rim half-shadowing his face, leaving only his deep, quiet eyes watching me through the rising steam. One by one, the triumphant generals received their rewards. The prince, already a titled prince of the first rank, held office at court and could scarcely be granted more. Thus the emperor sent from the private treasury several rare treasures, and 4 beautiful concubines. I merely smiled faintly when I heard. That night, for the first time, I did not send word inviting him to dine. When I had finished supper and wiped my lips, he appeared unannounced. I'm hungry, he said simply. I rose and instructed the servants. Prepare a few dishes for His Highness. He frowned slightly, puzzled, but said nothing. Only deep into the night, his restraint worn thin, did he murmur at last. Why didn't you call for me tonight? Exhausted under his touch, I had no strength to hide my thoughts. Your Highness needn't worry, for beauties were bestowed upon you, after all. It was meant as a jest. Yet his eyes reddened, his voice rough as he pressed his face against the hollow of my neck. I knew it, he whispered bitterly. They'll never let me live in peace. The moment they see us united, they send women to divide us. You don't believe me, I understand. But there are things I can only say to you. His breath trembled. To me, women have always been frail, foolish creatures who bring only trouble. I never thought I'd take a wife, or have children. But Lady Yao, you are different. 2 warm tears fell onto my collarbone. For a long time, I couldn't speak. He was crying. It seemed impossible. I brushed my fingers lightly beneath his eyes and teased. I've never seen a man cry before. Let me have a good look, Your Highness. I yelped when he bit me in retaliation. Laughing, I wrapped my arms around his waist, soothing him softly. All right, all right. Don't be afraid. As long as Your Highness's heart never strays, mine will always stay with you. Perhaps our rebirths had been meant to mend the regrets of our past lives. Qin Wei still failed to win my cousin. And I, who once lived and died for him, had found my heart moved by another. What lay ahead, I did not know. But in this moment, at least, my heart was at peace. Side story. After being made Marquis, Qin Wei petitioned the court for an official title and seal in his wife's name. The emperor granted it. Overjoyed, my cousin began visiting the prince's residence often to speak with me. One day, her expression was particularly awkward. After much coaxing, she confessed. It's all because of my brother-in-law, your husband. The men who fought alongside him have all been promoted. Even his old subordinates outrank him now. I've begged him to let me ask you for help, but he forbade me, said not to trouble you. I'm furious. I smiled lightly. He may have his reasons. She slammed her teacup down. Reasons. It must be that someone stole his credit. Qin Wei is your brother-in-law, you must help us. If you won't, who will? I kept my tone even. Perhaps he simply refuses to curry favor. You should speak to him first. Her voice rose. Even between sisters, you shirk a little thing like this. Your husband is a prince, surely he could look into it with a single word. You live as a princess consort and still act so meek, it's pathetic. My hand paused midair. I set the porcelain cup down with a clear, sharp click. The air turned cold. I looked straight at her, my face expressionless. She froze, tears springing to her eyes, and quickly stood, unable to utter another word. I don't know what she did after returning home. Only that soon after, her family came once again begging me to intervene. But this time, it was Qin Wei who sought to repudiate his wife. When the gatekeeper came to report, I was sitting by the bed, feeding medicine to the prince. He had never been sick before, but once struck by a chill, it hit him far harder than it would an ordinary man. Cough, cough. Watching him cough until his face flushed red, how could I bear to leave? I waved my hand at the servant. His Highness cannot be left unattended. Tell them I'm not available. As soon as the servant left, the prince spoke, his voice low but sharp. Qin Wei looks capable on the surface, he said, but he's unstable inside. With that single sentence, Qin Wei's future was sealed. From then on, his name lingered near the bottom of every military assessment. His stipends were cut bit by bit, his influence fading like smoke. No one in the Marquisate could manage its affairs. Before long, all that remained was an empty shell of glory. As for my cousin, since the day Qin Wei demanded to repudiate her, she never dared utter the word divorce again. They became a pair infamous throughout the capital, known for endless quarrels and mutual resentment. Rumors said they fought often, but I hadn't expected them to brawl at my own child's full-month banquet. My cousin's frail body was no match for a soldier's strength. I immediately ordered the guards to restrain Qin Wei. Pinned to the ground, he still turned his head toward me, eyes filled with grievance and disbelief. The prince beside me gave a cold, disdainful snort. A month later, he reassigned Qin Wei to Yenzhou, a desolate place 1,000 miles away, barren and poor. Qin Wei departed alone, and no word ever came back. For half a year, not a single letter reached the capital. My cousin began to suspect he had died. But at the end of that year, a package arrived for me. A rare piece of violet fur sable. And beneath it, a single line written in familiar hand. Joy and sorrow, anger and laughter, all but a dream. 2 lifetimes in this mortal dust, both nothing but regret. The end.